Joseph, welcome to the programme. Welcome to New Zealand. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you too.
Uganda is a country that back in the 70s was very much in the news because of Idi Amin. Now that seems like ancient history to us now. I was amazed to read that it's only in February of last year that the government finally made Pentecostal and evangelical churches recognise them again. So that's what, 30 odd years later.
Exactly. Idi Amin, to start off, closed our churches in 1977. This was after he had agreed with the Islamic world that Uganda would become one of the Islamic nations of the world. And with that, there was a visit from President Muammar Gaddafi of Libya. There was also a visit from the Saudi Arabian king, King Faisal. And with that kind of influence, there was now a campaign to destroy everything that was Western or Christian.
Up until then, he had been very much an ally of Britain and even Israel.
Yes. Idi Amin started out with great connections with the West, as you said, in Israel, England, America even, and other nations. But as his religious traits came out, he changed his style and went east. Now, when he did that, anything that was either Christian or considered to be pushed by the West was considered taboo. And that's when all the trouble started. Now, of course, on the political scene, he had killed over 800,000 people in the political area. Many people are in exile, and some still are. But he didn't really look like dangerous when he started out. It was when he was just about on the exit that his traits really came out. He not only closed our churches, but also hounded some of the people. I had become a Christian in 1975, so I was only 2 years a Christian, having grown up in a home that did not believe in true Christianity. Now, when the churches were closed, we all went underground, and I and a few other people were arrested, taken to a police station, put in jail, and after 2 weeks, we were released on the pressure from Amnesty International. That's how I escaped to go to another country, to Kenya, in fact, to study. And I went to Bible school then. But Idi Amin was a much, much more dangerous person than everybody knew.
He had this very sort of larger-than-life, quite a sort of jolly persona. I remember seeing an interview on British television where he seemed eccentric but harmless.
Yes.
And all the time in the background, there was all this other stuff going on.
Idi Amin had two faces. He had a public face and a hidden face. The public face was the one that you saw on television, the one that was depicted in the news, and the one that was shown in the newspapers. He welcomed people, he talked with people, he actually had public shows of what he did in life. He went to a swimming pool in the open, he did a rally drive in the open, all of these things to just show the world that he was a good man. Because of that, he bluffed so many people into trusting him. Even when refugees started reporting, this is happening, these things are being done in our nation, the West said, that's a lie. We know he's a good man. Really, just close to 1 million people died before everybody showed up and said, oh no, we got to fight him. Now, when they tried that, again, it took it to the international arena. That's why it took a local community in the villages of Tanzania and Uganda to come together to wage war from a local situation. But on the international scene, he bluffed all of you, and he was very smart for that.
Yeah. So what was it like for Christians in Uganda at that time?
Oh, churches were closed. Some of them were turned into pubs and drinking places. Them that were really in good shape and had strong walls were turned into stores for merchandise, for produce, so that the name of Christ, as it were, or the name of a God that is not his God, his type of God, would never be remembered. That was one. On the other scene, he hated anybody that was educated. That's why so many people in the in the legal profession, so many people in the medical profession died under his rule. And so many people that were teachers, lecturers, all of them, anyone. It is believed he actually shot the Archbishop of the Church of Uganda, which is an Anglican church. Out there, it's believed he did it. Nobody seems to know the details, and those that know the details don't want to talk. But it looks like he did it personally. So he had this situation where in his heart he would go enraged. He would be like what we would call demon-possessed, and for a flip moment he forgets, he doesn't remember who he is, and suddenly he reacted, and in so doing did havoc to the nation. But as it were, the forces pushed him out of the nation. He went into exile and ended up dying in Saudi Arabia about 3 or 4 years ago.
So after he left, after he was overthrown,
yes,
what happened to the churches then? Because I mean, your church wasn't allowed back.
The churches had gone underground, most of them, except the 4 traditional churches: the Catholic Church, the Anglican Church, and the Greek Orthodox. But anything else, Seventh Adventist, Salvation Army, anything Pentecostal, anything evangelical, went underground. So when he left, these churches now came back to life again. The pastors showed up. Those that had their buildings tried to repossess them, and all of that. Now, the churches then started, because the churches were in prayer at that time. It was like an underground movement that suddenly sprang up. That's why there is what is called a mushrooming community of churches in Kampala and in Uganda in general, because these churches were there, but only simmering under there with prayer. The revival that is happening in Uganda is a revival of prayer. It's a revival that comes out of pain, out of torture, out of the very many bad things that happened to the churches. Now, when suddenly peace was returned to a nation, at that stage, the churches blossomed. But the subsequent governments that came after Idi Amin, up to the current one, did not have much time to think about the freedoms, the inherent freedoms of humanity. When this new government came in and they established a new constitution, we read the constitution. It says Uganda shall not adopt a state religion as one. So that was in direct inference to the statute that Idi Amin had established, that there were only 4 religions. Of course, Islam and the other 3. Now, because of that freedom, we said, look, our churches were closed. Why don't you now reconsider our situation and repeal this decree that went against us? And it became really big issue, big debate, because it was done by president. It had to be now discussed by parliament whether to repeal that law. It took eternity, 16 years of discussion. And then last year is when the president decided that this was, whether this was going to go through parliament or not, he was going to declare himself. He said, look, we can't keep these people. We're talking about 12% of the population. Uganda is about 33 million people. That's only 12% born-again Christian, evangelical Pentecostal churches. There are other churches, the Catholics, the Anglicans. If you put all the Christians together, the Christian faith together, if you added in every shade of Christianity, we are well over 80%. How do you keep such people in a closed box? You can't close them out now anymore. We can't have to give them their freedom. And so government took that decision just last year, February.
Well, Joseph, we'll take a break there and we'll come back and chat some more in a couple of minutes.
Well,